before we work directly on the face, there are two features that we should address. And one is both hands basically, the glove hand and the hand here with the ball in it. And what we're going for here is just a shape. We're just going, for the outside shape. And so we're not going to get too excited over detail, that's for sure. So can you see in the diagram the division between the hand and the glove? That becomes a critical point down the road. So you've got your hand, your arm comes up in here to the glove. So before we can address that, we got to give this a round shape. So I'll go with the my favorite gouge, and I'm going to get that big number 5, 20 millimeter, and just start to give this some shape. And I'll use it upside down, and I know that it's all got to be curved around because the glove is all curved around. And when we get to the hand, we're going to treat it just like a glove as well. So I'll go ahead but that's how I work it. And I'll get that set up, and then we'll get the glove going here first. So if you look at the finished one, we got to get this curve that starts in here at the edge of his hat and comes right around, and forget about the finger or any detail. We're just going to get this circle coming. See this nice shape? That's all we're going for. No detail. Okay, so in the cutout there is a feature that I've identified, and can you see that there's a little notch right here? Well, that corresponds with this cut that I put in here. Okay, so that tells you roughly where the edge of that glove is going to be. So that's going to come down something like that. Okay, and the hand, if you look at the hand in the diagram here, remember we removed this wood over here? Well, that creates the far side, or the knuckle part of the hand. So the outside of his hand is going to be that curve going around as well. And again, we're not interested in any of the wrinkles or any of that stuff. All we're going to do is get the outside shape. So we're going to put a notch in here, okay, to indicate where the end of the glove is, and then we're going to circle and put the hand in there. So if I show you the finished one, maybe that'll help you visualize it. So the edge of the glove, there's the notch there, the hand goes around, and just get a nice shape. Don't try and put knuckles in or anything like that. We'll put all that in later. So we're just going to create a nice round shape in here, just like we did on the glove. So we'll start with a V-tool to indicate where the edge of that glove is going to be. I'm going to take a whack more wood out up here because that has to curve around, doesn't it? So once again, just a curvature, nothing fancy. We'll give it detail. We'll put the ball in his hand and all that later on. But just use that gouge again upside down. I'll go ahead and do that. So let's look at this for a minute. And in particular, I want to get the idea of where we stand with respect to the cutout. And you see that this is the peak of the hat. So that is this here. That's the peak of the hat. And this notch down here is actually the start of his nose. So this notch coming out of here is below the peak of the hat. So something I never do is I never start with the hat except for this time. So I want to get the curvature established in the peak of the hat. So I'm going to take off the edges that way, all right? So then by doing that, that gives me the indication as to where, and you can make it a little bit steeper if you want. Every hat is a little bit different. You want to make the curvature a little bit steeper, you can do that. But leave enough material, because this little tick out here ends up being the edge of his hat. Okay, and if it's not there, it's not there. I mean, it's not the end of the world if the peak of the hat doesn't. But anyway, get this curvature established first, and then we'll undercut here, because if this is his nose down here, we have to get access underneath his hat. See how we have to get access underneath the hat in order to establish the face. So that's why I start with the peak of the hat first. So get that shape going. Okay, so in order to have access in here to be able to complete the face, you can see how I have to get up underneath here. And the peak of the hat goes in. So if you take a look at my finished one here, you'll see what I mean. I have to get access up in here in order to create the brow and above the brow. So I'm going to do that with a V-tool. I'm just going to start to leave a shape or a thickness for the peak of the hat, and just start to a little bit of an undercut here. We're going to get a shape started here. So make sure you leave the peak of the hat. That's the key.
Would it be advisable to draw another line below that so you don't cut too high?
Well, yeah, if you need the visual for a line, go right ahead, yeah. Don't go too deep, because we don't need to go too deep. More or less creating a stop cut, just like that. All right, let's look at some of the features of his face before we get started. I'm losing my voice here. Now, remember when we first set this up, we established quite a width in here for his face. But you'll see here that the face is wider at the bottom than it is at the top. And even in my finished one, that's exactly the way I did it. And you could conceivably do, in his back pocket, let me explain this a bit more. In his back pocket, see this little thing here? That's chewing tobacco. Okay? So in his face, if you take a good look at his face, okay, all right, he's got a chew. Well, you could put that on the other side just as easy as on this side. It doesn't really matter, okay? I did leave a chew in mine. It's there, but it's very subtle. So it's your call as to whether or not you go ahead and do that. The key feature here is we've got that width to start with. And so the first thing I did was, remember I had a center line on here. I removed my center line. And now I'm going to reestablish it with more significant features of this face. His face comes down, and then there's a twist to it. So his jaw is over to his right. And to emphasize that, this Dave Stenson, purposely or not, or maybe it was the guy that did the drawing, it looks to me like the nose is a little bit to the other side. All right, so if you think of it, then we've got a couple of different center lines, haven't we? We've got a center line that comes down for the nose, but look at where the mouth is. So from the nose down, the center line changes, okay? So you've got two different directions there. So I'm only going to concentrate on the nose. I always say the nose anchors the face. So I'm going to divide the distance, and you can see it's roughly in half. So, and the reason why we got this bulk here, we've still got ears at the back here we have to put in. Even though we narrow in the face, we've still got to create those ears. So I'm going to try and arbitrarily decide on where center line is here. So I'm going to call that my nose. And down here it's going to change direction, but that's going to be center line for my nose. And you can manipulate that. You can change that. If you want to have it a little bit off to one side or the other, you can do it. He's got a broken nose. So the next thing I'm going to do is...
Brian?
Sorry?
Did you say that's halfway down, top to bottom?
Down here?
Yeah.
I just stopped it because the nose is going to end somewhere in there.
Okay.
And then I'm going to have a different center line eventually. I'm going to cut it off anyway, so there's no point in me marking it on. Because below the nose, I got to knock in a bit of material. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to leave that center line, but going both ways. Now I'm going to start to curve the side of his face. And I'll use the stop cut I got up in here as my guideline. So I'm going to knock off some wood, just start to give that a bit of shape, round it off just a little bit. And you can use a knife or a big gouge, one or the other. I'll just go ahead and do that. Okay, so how many times have you heard me say the nose anchors the face? This is no exception. So what you got to do is we've established a center line. Now we got to decide on the distance down. So what I do is I usually pick up a tool that usually fits it. So in this case here, it's pretty darn close to this gouge that I've got. If the nose is up or down just a little bit, I don't think anybody's ever going to notice. So on my carving, that's how I decided where I put my cross. Okay? So that's the distance down. So that's the bottom of his nose. And if you look at it side on, his nose doesn't stick out that much. It's a fairly flat nose. Even in my finished one here, if you look at it, it's a very flat nose. I tried to do exactly the same as what they did in the diagram, and you can see that they're pretty darn close. All right. So that's how you find. So the next thing is you've got to decide on how far in the nose goes. Well, you can see that the mustache protrudes out pretty good from the diagram. So all we're going to do is take a V-tool and go through there and have the flat side on the bottom of his nose, and that creates the angle. So if I was to come across there, I'm going to leave that mark. Three or four cuts just to get the depth. So you get hard to see the depth there. Leave that behind it. Just something like that. Doesn't have to be too deep, but deep enough just so we got the bottom of the nose. The key feature here, or thing to be aware of, is that the V-tool is flat against the bottom of the nose. This surface here is the flat surface, and that creates the notch. And now the mustache has already started to be created. Okay? So now we got to establish the width of the nose. So the width of the nose, it would be difficult to put a gouge that was the full width of that and then still find the center mark. So how I do it is I get a gouge or a tool that's about the right width from the center line. So then I can put that on, and that's how I measure it out. So I use the same methodology, but just from the center line out. So that gives me the distance out to this side, and that gives me the distance out to the other side. So I use that as my guide and put my marks on accordingly. That results in that mark and that mark. So hopefully this distance here and this distance here are pretty much the same. You can make a bit of adjustment when you go to relieve the material on either side. So that's what we're going to do after that. We're going to take a V-tool and we're going to go up the side. like that, up the side. And it ended up that one side's a little bit wider than the other, so I got to narrow this side down a bit.
A bit wider.
There we go, pretty close.
I've got a white tool, but I don't know if it's too wide.
Next thing is, take a good look at the snaz he's got on here. So his wings are right up high. A little bit crooked in that this one here seems to be a little bit lower than that one there. And maybe not quite as wide, but I'm going to make it more or less the same. So see the distance here on the point of his nose, or the lowest part of his nose. And then the wings go up after that. So I want to get a mark on either side of his nose. And I typically look at it from the bottom, and I put the center line comes down, and then I'm going to establish a width. Okay, so that's going to be then the bottom of his nose. Now his wings go up a fair ways, so I'm going to take a lot of liberal action here, and don't be afraid to give him and I put that line across there to indicate that's how high up the wings are going to be. So then, by following from that line there to there, that creates the wings. So these pieces out here come off, and can you see there? That creates the wing. Okay? So I just use a knife to go in there, and I push the point of the knife in right in this corner here. Where are we? Right in that corner there, deeper, because this is going to be the level here, but I want the nose to sit in the face. See how it sits in the face? So I have to have the nose sit in the face. So in order to do that, I put the point of the knife in deeper at the top of the wing, or the bottom of the wing, depending on how you look at that. All right, so I'll take my knife and I'll put it in, line it up, and then I'll push the point of the knife in deeper there, and out comes that chip. Maybe. So there's the wing is established simply by doing that. Okay, I'll do the other side. Next thing is, take a good look at the snaz he's got on here. So his wings are right up high. A little bit crooked in that this one here seems to be a little bit lower than that one there. And maybe not quite as wide, but I'm going to make it more or less the same. So see the distance here on the point of his nose, or the lowest part of his nose. And then the wings go up after that. So I want to get a mark on either side of his nose, and I typically look at it from the bottom, and I put the center line comes down, and then I'm going to establish a width. Okay, so that's going to be then the bottom of his nose. Now his wings go up a fair ways, so I'm going to take a lot of liberal action here, and don't be afraid to give him and I put that line across there to indicate that's how high up the wings are going to be. So then, by following from that line there to there, that creates the wings. So these pieces out here come off, and can you see there? That creates the wing. Okay? So I just use a knife to go in there, and I push the point of the knife in right in this corner here. Where are we? right in that corner there deeper, because this is going to be the level here, but I want the nose to sit in the face. See how it sits in the face?
Yeah.
So I have to have the nose sit in the face. So in order to do that, I put the point of the knife in deeper at the top of the wing, or the bottom of the wing, depending on how you look at that. All right, so I'll take my knife and I'll put it in, line it up, and then I'll push the point of the knife in deeper there, and out comes that chip. Maybe. So there's the wing is established simply by doing that. Okay, I'll do the other side. So the next thing you have to decide is how far up we're going to make that bridge in his nose. And if you use and if you see it comes up, he's got a very flat nose. Maybe I should come in a little bit closer on that so you can see it a bit better. So can you see that he's got a very flat bottom part of his nose here, but the width of it from the bottom of his nose up is very close to what the width of that gouge is there. So that's what I'm going to use for my mark, and right there. And then I'm going to take a high-sided gouge, number 11. This happens to be 4 millimeters. And I'm going to make that gouge through there. And then you can see that he's got a very flat section, say from there to there, could be even higher. So then it's just a question of going from that depth up to that mark there to remove the wood. So once again, so it's just a gouge through here with a high-sided gouge, number 11, and then and all I'm doing is creating the profile. So hopefully, oh boy, that's hard to see. I'll pass it around because you can't see that very good here. So take another look at the nose now, and what we did was we established a flat spot on the bottom, the wings going up on either side, and now the top of the wing, we have to establish that before we can remove the material in here for the eye. So we're going to put 2 marks on here. The first one is going to be another line straight across, and we're going to call that the top of the wing. So this part here is going to be the wing, and then we removed, when we carved this, we removed our center line. So we're going to put the center line back in, hopefully. There it goes. So now the bridge of the nose up here, see how wide that is? And you can guesstimate at that as well. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that in as being there. So now you can see we got another triangle we can take out, because we can remove some of the wood from above here, and that starts to create the eye socket. Is that too fast for you?
I see where you put those 2 dots. Okay.
The 2 dots here?
Yeah.
I put them right in the hollow where we put where we had the thing here. Okay. And now I'm going to use, go back to that number 11. 11 will work, 4 millimeter. It can be, a number 9 would work as well. But I'm going to go in here now, and I can create, just by hollowing that out, I can create the other side of his nose. And all I'm doing is removing wood. I'm not trying to give it any kind of final feature. We're just creating the shape of the nose. So can you see where I'm at there? Can I get a little bit tighter on that maybe? There. kind of gives you a better idea. So I've removed the wood right on either side of the nose, right up to where the bridge is. So we more or less got a triangle on the top and a triangle on the bottom, and that's kind of the basics of a nose. And I guess we'll leave it at that for this week, if you can get that so far. And then, so next week we'll work on the eyes. We'll get the eye set, and then general shape the mustache, and which is the biggest feature on the front of his face.